39.3%. Let that sink in for a second. Nearly 40%. According to regional reports, that is the percentage of people living in poverty in the region we're examining today. Welcome, aspirants. If you're gearing up for competitive exams like the CSS, PMS, or UPSC, this single striking statistic should instantly tell you why today's topic is an absolutely high-yield, mandatory subject. Honestly, you literally cannot write a strong paper on the economy, sociology, or public administration without having a rock-solid grasp on this. So let's dive right into this masterclass on the anatomy of poverty. I'm going to be your professor and mentor for this explainer, and we're going to break this topic down exactly how you need to structure it for your exams. We're not just going to talk about what poverty is. We're going to dig into the hard data, the root causes, the devastating impacts, and the actionable solutions. I want you to treat this exactly like a live classroom lecture. Get your notebooks ready, because by the end of this session, you are going to have a comprehensive, bulletproof framework ready for a 20-mark essay. All right. Here is our roadmap for today's masterclass. We'll be covering 1. Defining the poverty line, 2. Root causes of poverty, 3. Socioeconomic consequences, 4. Strategies for alleviation, and finally 5. Exam analysis and takeaways. Kicking things off with Section 1, Defining the poverty line. You know, poverty isn't just a feeling or a vague concept. It is a meticulously calculated global metric. If a candidate starts their essay by just writing, poverty is when people are poor, well, they've already lost the examiner's attention. You've got to be specific. Memorize this definition right here. You are living in extreme poverty if you earn less than $2.15 per day. This metric was updated by the World Bank in September 2022, and it's based on the 2017 Purchasing Power Parity, or PPP. Now, what actually is PPP? In simple terms, it's just a way to measure how much a standard basket of goods costs in different countries. It makes sure we're comparing apples to apples globally when we look at incomes. It replaced the old $190 standard. So what does falling below this line actually mean in the real world? It means a person simply lacks the financial power to secure the absolute bare minimum living standards essential for survival. We're talking basic food, basic shelter, and basic healthcare. This right here is your gold standard introductory definition. But hold on, here is a massive trap that students constantly fall into, and it's absolutely crucial we clear it up. Let's think about this comparison. If you convert that $2.15 into local currency, let's say it's around 580 or 600 Pakistani rupees, you might think, well, a daily wage laborer makes 1,000 rupees a day, so they aren't technically poor, right? Wrong. You absolutely have to account for family size. The sources point out that in this region, average household sizes can be incredibly large, often 10 to 11 members, largely due to a lack of family planning. So if one person earns the equivalent of $2.15 but has to feed 10 mouths, that income is severely diluted. To truly lift that specific household above the poverty line, the main earner actually needs to bring in $21.15 a day, which is over 5,800 rupees daily. The takeaway? Always contextualize global metrics with local demographic realities in your exams. It shows deep analytical thinking. Moving right along to Section 2, Root Causes of Poverty. To score highly in these exams, you must categorize your arguments logically. Don't just throw a random list of problems at the examiner. We are going to divide the root causes into 2 main buckets: systemic issues and social behaviors. A really great memory trick for this is the acronym CUIE: corruption, unfair taxes, illiteracy, and extravagance. On the governance and political side, we've got corruption, massive political instability, and an incredibly unfair taxation system. According to the sources, only about 5% of the wealthy actually pay taxes. This literally leaves the poorest citizens bearing the brunt of the economic weight. Then, over on the social and educational side, we have widespread illiteracy, a severe lack of vocational training, and landlessness, which often happens because inheritance just keeps getting divided generation after generation. But pay close attention to that middle point under the social category: extravagance and misinterpretation of fate. The sources highlight a really fascinating cultural issue, where people sometimes spend lavishly when they absolutely shouldn't, or they fail to approach their work scientifically, give up, and then falsely blame their fate or destiny for their poverty. Bringing up that nuanced sociological point, that is exactly how you impress an examiner. Now, when you make the claim that poor governance is a root cause, you have to back it up with hard data. Anchor your argument with this stat: ranked 140 out of 180 countries on the Corruption Perception Index. Examiners are specifically looking for you to drop the Corruption Perception Index to validate governance arguments in your essays. Widespread corruption, in both government and the private sector, completely destroys the social fabric of a nation. It undermines business confidence, which in turn leads to low investment, stifled growth, and ultimately way fewer jobs for the people who need the most. When you confidently cite a specific rank, like 140 out of 180, you prove to the examiner that you are dealing in cold, hard facts, not just your personal opinions. Let's rapidly hit a few more high-yield facts you really should jot down. Educationally, the region suffers from massive historical government neglect. We're talking about the second highest number of out-of-school children globally, right behind Nigeria. That's huge. Also, remember that agrarian economies completely rely on land, yet only 37% of the population actually owns any land. The rest are essentially exploited for super low wages. Furthermore, political turmoil directly halts business. The sources specifically cite the recent closures of major tech-driven companies like Swivel and Airlift simply because of instability. And finally, globalization. While it's great for connecting the world, it also means imported machines are replacing local manual labor, and cheap imported products are completely out-competing local industries, wiping out domestic jobs in the process. Okay, let's pause for a quick, interactive checkpoint, just to test your retention. Think of this as a classic MCQ you might face on exam day. What is the updated 2022 World Bank Global Poverty Line? Think about it for a second. We covered this right at the start. If you said $2.15 per day, you are spot on. Great job. Let's keep that momentum going. All right, Section 3, Socioeconomic Consequences. This is the part of your essay where you connect the dry economic data directly to visceral social issues. Because poverty doesn't just mean lack of money in a bank account, it creates a cascading, disastrous domino effect of societal breakdown. The sources paint a pretty grim picture here. Poverty literally forces families to send their kids to work instead of school. We're looking at 4 million children, kids aged just 14 to 15, trapped in hazardous labor simply to help their families survive. And when basic survival is on the line, people are driven to absolute extremes. This leads directly to a massive surge in crime, street violence, and drug abuse. People turn to begging, and incredibly vulnerable groups are even forced into prostitution. Ultimately, poverty causes a severe decline in social status. Marginalized folks just cannot adjust properly into society because they are dealing with immense, crushing mental frustration and stress. And you know, the physical toll is just undeniable. Consider this health statistic: a life expectancy rank of 135 out of 194 countries, with the average life expectancy sitting at less than 65 years. This perfectly illustrates how poor living standards, inadequate food, and a complete lack of access to healthcare physically manifests in a population. When you are writing about the consequences of poverty, linking economic deprivation directly to a shortened lifespan, that is a tremendously powerful argument to make. Let's pivot now to solutions. Section 4, Strategies for Alleviation. So what's the way forward? Because in competitive exams, you can't just be a critic who highlights problems. You have to step into the shoes of an administrator and provide actionable, policy-driven solutions. The sources emphasize several targeted approaches we need to look at. First, existing safety nets, like the Benazir Income Support Program, or BISP, and Batewell Mall. They have to be made more productive and aggressively expanded to make sure resources actually reach the most vulnerable people. Second, we urgently need technical and vocational training. You literally cannot ignore 50% of your population. Women must be empowered with skills, whether that's industrial or home-based, so they can contribute financially. The sources also propose a really fascinating administrative solution for begging, taking beggars off the streets, placing them in designated welfare centers or Dar al-Masakin, and teaching them physical trades like carpentry or tailoring so they can earn a dignified living. Finally, on a macroeconomic and societal level, there has to be a massive push for job creation to end idleness, alongside cultural campaigns to strictly control extravagance and promote a strong culture of savings. Almost done. Section 5, Exam Analysis and Takeaways. We are now in the final phase of our masterclass, guys. It's time to consolidate everything we've talked about into a high-yield format that you can use for your final revisions. Think of this as your ultimate cheat sheet. Based on previous year exam trends, essays that fail to cite global indices rarely score above average. It's just a fact. So these are the data points you absolutely must drop in your writing: the $2.15 threshold, the CPI rank of 140, and the life expectancy rank of 135. But just as importantly, these are the reports you must cite to validate your arguments: the Multidimensional Poverty Index of 2022, the Human Development Index of 2022, and the World Bank reports. Citing these specific, globally recognized indices, that is exactly what separates an average candidate from a top-tier candidate. It shows incredible depth, meticulous research, and real administrative awareness. To wrap things up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought, styled exactly like a high-level interview question you might face right in front of a panel. How does family size complicate the $2.15 per day poverty threshold? Based on everything we unpacked today, you know exactly how to answer this. You wouldn't just give a basic answer like more people means less money. No, you would confidently explain the severe dilution of income, the lack of family planning, and how a seemingly adequate daily wage for a single individual completely collapses when it's applied to a 10-person household. That is the exact level of nuanced, real-world understanding you need to succeed. Keep studying, keep analyzing the hard data, and use these frameworks to build absolutely undeniable arguments. You've totally got this.